how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
To infinity and beyond!
Some people without brains do an awful lot of talking, don't they?
It's classified.
You talking to me?
I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you.
I can't lie!
Expecto Patronum!
Entertainment X.
You never know what you're going to get.
For this episode, I sit down and chat with Michael Lord. Michael is a model manager and so much more. He's traveled all around the world training and helping create careers for individual models. This is a really interesting conversation because we dive deep to the ins and outs of the modeling industry, where he finds different talents, what it means and what it takes to be a model, and his upbringing, and so much more. So I really hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did having the conversation with Michael Lord. Keep on keeping on. We're back. I'm Clayton Howe, and today with me on the phone is Michael Lord. Michael, thank you for chatting with me this morning.
Hi, thank you for having me.
This is
fun.
Yeah, this will be a great conversation. It's we met in New York City through Kat Carter, one of the models, many models of the world, and in layman's term, you're her agent, manager.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's I guess. I guess the model and model world slightly different than the actor and talent side of it. So, when you get into talent managers and agents, the terms kind of mean something a little different. But anyway, it's we'll go with that. That's a good summary.
That's perfect. Okay, very good. And for you, it's you're now in this agent model scouting division, president of Modeling Corporation world, but you started as a model, correct?
Yeah. That's years ago. I mean, that's how I got into it. It's a little bit of a weird world, which I'm sure most people would come to terms with, but. It was kind of, that's how I got my foot in the door. I mean, other than that, you don't go to school to be a model and talent agent. I mean, this is a good point you're bringing up, because I had on Dale, I don't know if you're familiar with True Model Management in New York City. They do more of the fit modeling division. I had on Dale Noel. She's the founder of that. And then she had set me up with some of the other designers, and it was a very, the conversations each time were, well, this wasn't what I was planning to do, but it's what happened. And I'm curious, growing up in Canada, what did you want to be when you grew up? What did you have your eyes set on? Well, I think like any young kid, you kind of go through the spectrum of, I don't know, I think I wanted to be an astronaut at one time, a superhero somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So as you start to narrow down into a little more realistic, dream would have been, paid millions of dollars to play professional hockey, but that didn't pan out. And I just, I went to school, and I've just always been involved in numbers and business. And so after I finished my degree in business management, I just thought to sit in a bank, it was just like, it just didn't seem right. And then I had an opportunity. I was actually scouted while I was still at school by an Italian agent. And then after I graduated, I went overseas right away. And, I would spend a lot of time sitting around in the agencies. Mind you, this is just as technology started to come in. Computers were just being implemented. Now I'm really dating myself, but, we learned on a different, everything was pencil and paper and drawn in. And, I just spent a lot of time when I wasn't on castings or jobs, and I just sat around an agency helping my agents and learning as much as I could. And it was just,
yeah, it was just a natural progression at that point. But yeah, you just fall into these kind of things, you know?
Yeah, well, that's true. And while you were modeling, did you have a very keen sense of the business of it, and you knew that was something you'd really like to get into? Or did that come later after, the modeling kind of ended, I guess?
No, I think it was always there. Like I said, I love business. Even when I was younger, I think I started 3 or 4, little businesses out of my house. So I've got that entrepreneurial spirit. It was just, like I said, it was really, I was going to go into banking, and I thought, oh my God, after spending 4 years traveling the world, seeing all sorts of craziness and living a business, the fashion entertainment, it's a completely different world.
Right.
You just don't compare that to I don't know, a normal job. I don't know, can you say that?
Yeah, I guess so. Sure.
But yeah, no, I think I always knew I would want to stay on that side. But yeah, until it was offered to me, and it was kind of like, oh, well, I guess. Yeah, it's I don't know. It's weird. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, well, no, I understand.
But,
it's non-linear, and
Yeah.
you can tell me if I'm wrong, but it's very entrepreneurial, having to scout or manage scouters and the whole maintaining multiple time zones. Where does this entrepreneurial mindset come from for you? Do you attribute it to anyone?
Cool. No. It's funny.
Great.
Yeah, I'm actually right now. I'm back in my home city visiting family, and we were just talking about this yesterday. I've got a few little nephews, and so they're learning to play games, and there's risks involved. And if you take a chance on taking this card, then you could lose everything. Anyway, it's a process. And I have one nephew that is a big risk taker. But other than that, the entire family, I don't know where it comes from. I really am kind of like an anomaly in how I was raised. I don't know. If you look at, like I said, if you look at the family, for the most part, it's very safe. Everyone's, no one else would attempt certain things. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's
I don't know.
the studying university and being scouted by the Italian agent. What was that progression? Where was that? Where were you scouted? What was that event?
I was so I went to school in a smaller city, about an hour and a half outside of Toronto. And I was up in Toronto just doing something one day, and that's how it happened. I mean, when it comes to scouting, there's different ways of obviously things happening, and a lot more now, given the fact that social media and the internet and all of that. Back when it happened for me, it was, you've got street scouts, which that's it. There's people that stand on the street and all they do is look at people and then approach them. So that's how it really happened with me. And yeah.
And you were literally approached on the street. You're walking down the street, down Queen Street in Toronto, and they got you.
Exactly.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Queen West.
Oh yeah, it was. Oh, I was guessing. That's great. What do you love most about traveling?
Oh, yeah. Well, I would have to say that's probably why I like to do the job as much as I do. It's not a typical lifestyle, and for me, what I love about the travel aspect is, now granted, it's not like I'm going to any crazy third world countries and really struggling. So my travels consist of you're staying in nice places. It's a nice city. Everything is set up for you. Like I'll go in, for example, when I managed the scouting for our New York and Paris company, I would fly around the world, whether it be, you go to Russia, you go to Sweden, you go to Bulgaria, Holland. When I fly in, I would then be in contact with the local agencies. The local agencies would basically be doing their street scouting in those areas. So basically it starts from a regional area. They find their talent there. I'll come in. I'll meet the best talent out of those cities or that country, and then decide whether, they were strong enough for the New York or the Paris markets. So it's not that my travels were, it wasn't a difficult travel arrangement. That being said, there's a lot of instances where in certain Eastern European countries, where business is conducted a little differently than you would expect from the Western civilizations, or certain players involved, which a little bit of the black market area. I've crossed paths with like gangster. It's crazy. I mean, it's a funny business. There's a lot of money. It's youthful. It's full of beauty, and it's mysterious. I mean, people think they know what it's about because they see a TV show, which, whether it's America's Next Top Model or this or that. But I mean, that's not the industry. That's not how it works. I mean, that's made for TV kind of stuff. It's fun competitions that people can watch on a regular basis, but that's nowhere near what the industry is like. So, what I like about travel, now that I've just danced around the entire thing, probably I like newness. I don't necessarily like routines to be. I don't like the monotony of it, So it's always something different. There's always something to stimulate. I mean, hopefully that answered your question.
Do you have? It did. I mean, it also brought up a whole bunch more questions, which is exciting. Do you have a preference on metropolitan areas or beaches? Do you have any particular favorite spots that you've been to, or that you like to return to?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, if we're going just off of the best success rate on taking a brand new kid, guy or girl, and turning them into bona fide model or fashion stars, right, I love Holland. Holland's just genetically they're just beautiful people. Sure. They're tall, healthy. It's all the bike riding. It's but they're beautiful people. I don't know how else to say it. That Scandinavia is also a hotbed for a lot of the talent. Beaches all have our street scouts and people like that, which will go walk around beaches and find people that way. Sporting events, school events, anything that requires athleticism, to a certain extent. As I was saying, with Sweden and Scandinavia, themselves, for instance, that's a culture where most of the young girls growing up all ride horses. So the best place to be scouting in Scandinavia is horse shows. It's like watching in America, athletic girls or tall girls are good to play basketball or volleyball or that kind of sport. So These are kind of things where you look at. It changes. It changes with cultures. It changes with nationalities. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to go to Brazil, the beach, you go to the beach.
Right.
But yeah. So
what have you learned about negotiating, and how have you gotten better?
Negotiating. Again, it comes down to this is in international business. So it's understanding the person you're dealing with.
Sure.
And I think, in any negotiation, it's smart to understand, where the value is placed. So obviously, you know what you want and what is valued to you. But when you're negotiating with your counterpart, it's understanding what their mindset is. So, and how you can drive value from that. When I deal with, and this is an example that I give often because people do ask about the negotiation aspect, especially with us. I mean, if you look at our talent, it's kind of like recruiting for college sports. When you've got a star, they can. I mean, what's the difference? They sign with LSU or they sign with Florida, or I mean, they're all going to get an education. They're all going to play with a Division I team. So how do you persuade someone to sign with you as opposed to your competitor? The other thing is, when you deal with, for instance, Japan, when you deal with Japanese people, they don't say no. So, if you don't understand how they negotiate, and if someone says, yeah, maybe that will work, and you take it as, oh, okay, I think we're going somewhere, a maybe is a Japanese no. Okay. A yes is a yes, a maybe is a no. They find it rude to say no to somebody. Whereas when you deal with Finnish people, you have to be very, very direct. You cannot allude to anything. You cannot dance around a subject. It has to be blunt and to the point. So you have to say, I will do this for you. You need to do this for me. And that is how you negotiate there. You can't say, well, if you were to do this, this would probably happen. So there's different techniques based on, the cultures that you're dealing with. So other than that, it's a big international business, but it's also quite small. It's the same people involved that control major parts. So, I mean, I guess it's the same as what you're used to. I mean, if you've got studio heads or this or that, the industry is huge, but there's key people that you're constantly dealing with all the time and that hold certain power. So that's really the same as us. It's having that relationship with people, maintaining it, and then understanding how individual cultures they themselves negotiate and what's acceptable and what isn't. So,
has it gotten easier?
No.
Okay. No.
Well, I mean, it's gotten easier in the sense that you do it long enough and you understand the ins and outs, and again, you've developed rapport and relationships with people over years and years and years. So yes. Is it easier now for me than what it was, when I first started 20 years ago? Absolutely. But the industry is constantly changing with technology and everything. I mean, not just our industry, every industry. But you've constantly got to be looking at how you can improve. Agencies and management companies pop up, all the time. So it's more and more competition. But yeah, so it's easier than what it was when I was first learning. But it's not a walk in the park. There's work constantly.
Well, yes, and I think those are great points you're bringing up. Depending on which culture you're communicating with, it's different. The same words have different meanings, even just from politeness standpoint. Do you have, or
Yeah.
did you have mentors that have taught you significant amounts? Does anything stand out in your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, maturity wise, I think you start to. I think it's a natural progression. As you mature, you start to see things differently, and you view stuff differently. So, I at the beginning, and even now, I mean, I try to not talk as much as I listen. I think it's good advice in life in general. I mean, you learn from listening. You don't learn from talking. So, I like to hear people out. I like to, look at things from other perspectives. And again, that's where the travel comes in. It's almost getting out of your regular box and seeing things from a different perspective. But, yeah, I would say there's a few people that were very key in my growth. It's the tough thing now for talking about that
Sure.
is because a lot of what's happened in the past, and I'm sure, I mean, it from TV and film as well. Business as usual has changed dramatically over the past few years, decades. What happened back in the 70s, it wouldn't fly now, and so
Right.
I've got a few people that were great mentors in the sense of helping me understand the business and that sort of thing. But I don't look to them for how to put this. I'm trying not to put my foot in my mouth for this.
No, I know, and it makes sense though because you're bringing up good points here. That it's outdated. Some of the previous dealers could be outdated. They introduced you to people, but communication has evolved, I guess, or whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at for instance, John Casablancas. I don't know if you know that name at all. He was the guy that created Elite Model Management way back in the time. Now, this is going years back. This is in the 70s. Your listeners are going to hear Elite Model Management. They're going to know the name. It's a different entity. Right. The company is split between their European and their American operations. Anyway, so let's get past. Don't think of Elite Model Management as that elite, but he was a guy that he began his career at Coca-Cola in Brazil. He spoke 6 different languages, but he was also known for a playboy. Back in the day, it was okay. Nowadays, you're vilified. So that's the kind of thing. I mean, I had a lot of respect and I learned a lot from him and those kind of people. But the way I approach situations and, business and pleasure, I kind of draw a very distinct line, as opposed to some of those older people back in the day. Another big person for me is a woman named, she's still alive, Nathalie Paris, which she gave me my first job in Paris. I stayed with her for, I think, 12 years through the business. She started under John Casablancas at Elite Paris as well before forming her own company. And she was, and continues to be. I still work with her. She's now the chief executive officer of Women Management out of Paris. So we do a lot of work. Still talk to her quite often. But yeah, I mean, I grew up with her, and learning it from a woman, I think also gave me an advantage at the time. So,
an advantage in communicating with female models, or just getting the
communicate. I think, yeah, I think. Well, I think it one, seeing the business from a different perspective, and a strong woman at that, which back at that time they were quite few. It was a very male driven industry. Good or bad, like I said. Yeah, I mean, we all are aware of what the 70s and what that was like. So, but I think with her, it was really, again, just understanding from a woman's side, and someone, a powerful woman that grew up there. It allowed me to just have a different perspective, I think, and just kind of counterbalance, the different sides of how people perceived or saw the industry. And
this is,
that makes sense.
I appreciate you bringing this up and being willing to talk about it, because you're a great guy. And I think it's very interesting to hear, what you learned in the past to how you operate, and what you took and what you disregarded from there. And it's having a keen sense of, self-respect and respect for other humans. And I think you have a very high value on that. And I can feel it when I talk to you. And I think it's fantastic, that you're willing to talk about how you distilled information that, may not be proper business practices to now. Plus, a lot of parents have to have a lot of trust with you and for you to be taking, 18-year-old girls, from Belgium to Paris, from Paris to New York, for these modeling opportunities. And I'm curious, what are your views on trust and portraying that and conveying it to parents? Does anything come to mind?
Absolutely. I mean, I've had times where, I've been at an airport going somewhere, and I've spotted a young girl that has potential to be a model. So the way I approach those situations are, obviously, you can usually gauge if someone is under the age of 16 for the most part. So usually the young ones, I try to deal directly with parents. So if I see them first, I'll ask if their parents are around, or could you, introduce me to your parent. If there isn't a parent there, I'll give my information. I don't ask for phone numbers or anything like that, because it can get weird. But I try to get at least an email, so I can. The problem is, a lot of times when you scout someone and they really could be a model, they really don't know they could be a model, and they kind of just disregard it. So I like to have that follow up that says, listen, let's have a conversation. Let's see if it's something that would be interesting to you, because you do have the potential to do it. So I deal with the parents directly that way. I like to think of it as, if I had a daughter or I had a son, how would I want to be dealt with? But yeah, I've had parents tell me off before, as if I was, there to steal young children or whatever. And, at that point, I just say, here's my card. You can see what we do. I understand if it's not of interest for you, it's not for everyone, but, at least check it out. So it's, and it can be it can be tough. I mean, it is, again, how do I say this? It's easier for women to scout.
They're more interested in becoming a model?
Well, no. Sorry. It's easier for a woman scout to find talent as opposed to a male. And that's simply just due to the optics. In the sense of, I know a bunch of scouts all over the world, but some of them, they're super nice people, by the way. But when you first meet them, you go, oh my, I know some guys that are in Russia that look like they're KGB killers. I'm like, how could any parent hand over their child to you? This is just crazy. So it's a lot easier when someone is approached by a woman, just because it's you know what I mean? It's
there's more of a motherly figure. It's more trusting. It's more eternal.
Exactly.
It's not a guy saying, you have a lot of talent, I can make you money. So it's a difference.
Exactly.
What?
And, it's
Sorry,
go ahead.
No, you first.
I was just going to say that it's a great business. It's fun. There's nothing's ever constant. There's always stuff going on. But it's one of those things where for a male it's trying to think of any other profession where women are paid more than men. And I think our industry is the only one that does it right now. I'm trying to think of who else would be. But our industry is the only legit industry where, women, we're talking about a
big difference.
A pay difference of, 3, 4, 5 times.
Wow.
So when you look at these women that are making, $3, $4, $5 million a year, their counterpart for a male is you're looking at about, like I said, a fifth of that. It's just, so, and being a man in the business too, you just got to be very careful. And this is where you were saying, how do parents trust and this and that. You've got to understand who the person is, and you've got to know them a bit. But I'm very cautious about reputation. And it can be very dangerous, again, to get, to let your personal life cross over into the professional. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
So if you ever...
No, it's huge in theater. You're working with male and female ensemble cast members, whatever. You guys are all together. There's a lot of dating in theater among cast members, and it took me until after a year or two after college to realize, like, okay, that's not something I'm going to do. It creates more drama, and it can affect your reputation because things get emotional. So it's just being intelligent. It's just like it's an intelligent form of dating to not mix work and play. And these are like, we can make jokes about it, but you're bringing up a really great point. To have that line, way more success can come to you. Because you're not,
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It's, we're in a business of image. That's all we do is we sell image. It's everything that those girls or guys are doing. It's based off of you're playing a character to sell a brand and the image that they want to portray at that point. But it goes for everything else. For me personally, again, if you don't want to have a narrative that's negative. Now, again, you can't control everything that people say, and regardless of true or not, there's always people that are going to, spin something, especially when you're, again, in a business where it's almost like you're, it's a high school where it's the same people over and over again. Of course, rumors and all that gets spun. But I like to err on the side of caution, and you know what? It's don't get yourself in any kind of position that could cause any negative backlash. So it's kind of the way I've tried to handle my business for 20 years, and
it's working. But that's
so far so good.
So far so good, right? That's a great point though that you bring up, because when you're around, and this was a whole joke in a lot of productions I've been in. It's like there's a whole bunch of pretty people. Everyone's so pretty, oh, making jokes and this whole, and it's become a really big conversation with, and sexual harassment, just the programs that they give each, theatrical company in terms of explaining, even if someone's okay with the joke doesn't mean they're actually okay with the joke. So to really understand that, to have that separation of this is work, I remember back to our lunch in New York that when we were eating, you had everyone at the table talking way more than you were. And I know you said earlier you learn more from listening than talking. And I think it's a fantastic trait because the more you have someone talking to you, the more they like you because of that interest level. They're interested. Yeah. And it's common sense. I mean, that makes sense. I'm curious, how has that been cultivated? Part one. Part two, when you're approaching a new model who's erring on the side of interest, and they want to be in volleyball or basketball or they're horseback riding, how do you, in a very blunt way, quote unquote, close the deal or cultivate that trust? Because I know it's, you can make a lot of money, you be pretty, people take your picture. That's a big selling point to someone. But what is that? What is that dialogue? What are the parents usually saying? What are their worries and concerns?
Yeah,
it's a big question.
I mean that's a broad one. But I think in general, the majority of concerns on the parent side is obviously, and let's assume that we're talking about a 16, 17 or an 18-year-old, is really. Well, I want them to have their education, and they need to do this, and this, and of course you've got to sit and discuss whatever rumor or idea that they've had, true or false, from TV or whatever, of what the industry is, first and foremost. So they either think it's a horrible industry where everything's just crazy, or they have no idea about it. So. One, the first thing is educating them on, the realities to the business. Second is understanding that it's not a either or situation. You can do school, you can model at the same time. Then we have to get into the area of, how much potential that model has. There's a guy or a girl that can work locally and make, $100,000 a year or so. And then there are other ones that are at a level and potential that they could really be superstars and, make those seven figures for multiple years. So we approach it differently.
Sure.
I don't like to sell anyone on, pipe dreams or anything like that. I'm very realistic upfront with what is to be expected. And then other than that, it really comes down to listening. And it's just understanding that everyone isn't the same. Everyone has their concerns, whether they're legitimate or not, but they need to be addressed. And then, it's a process. It's something where, you've got to have that feedback loop, and that's constantly where, you're explaining something to them. They give you feedback. You understand where they're at that point. You move forward from there, and then it's just kind of like baby steps. We've got one girl, for instance, she's French, moved to Montreal for school. And I found her at a mall. I was walking through at Christmas time. And again, she thought I was a horrible person and the fashion industry is disgusting. And, it's horrible thing. I spent a couple months convincing her to at least come into the agency to have a real conversation. Otherwise, I wasn't going to stop calling her. So she finally came in. We sat down. She started to learn that, the business is not exactly what she thought it was. This is, we're now 2.5 years into this, and, she's one of the most motivated models we have, and working very well. And I mean, she tells me once every couple months, she's like, I am so glad that you were so persistent with me. I had no idea what I was talking about. I thought I knew what I was talking about, but I had no idea what I was talking about. So I'm so happy that you actually, you kept on. So it's one of those things, it's weird. I don't even know how else to explain it.
I think you're doing a great job. I think it's also interesting to see the long game of it. It takes a while. It's a long game.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And you have to keep at it. Are there common themes among, I guess, models you've worked with that you see repetitive, the top performers, common themes of the top performing models in terms of personality or, kindness or what have you?
Yeah. It is, now this is, again, just to give you an idea of how this works, the job is, first and foremost, looks. That's where it starts. So to be a model, it's about your physical appearance. But that being said, for every pretty girl, there's another 3,000 around the world that are just as pretty or just as handsome as that other guy. Right. So what makes the difference between, that next level supermodel and that model kind of thing? And that really comes down to the personality.
Sure.
You want nice people. You want people that appreciate things, that know how to speak kindly to other people. I've dealt with many, many, many personalities. Some, obviously more likable than others. But the ones that were very successful, whether they were nice people to begin with or not, they understood it as a business, and they understood the importance of them selling themselves. So even some of the girls that I just, you just don't like, they're just not likable people. They could turn it on for clients, and you would go, that's a professional. She knows exactly what she's doing. She knows what's important, the relationships, how to cultivate them, how to keep them moving, how to keep people interested. If you're going on a job, you got let's take a beautiful girl. It doesn't take any genius for her to book multiple first jobs. What's important is those follow-ups. So you can work once for Vogue or this or that, but they need to keep booking you. So if you're on a shoot with clients and you've got a whole team there, photographer, hair, makeup, you've got your assistants, you've got your production, you've got your director, you've got all of that, and you're there for 5 days on some island, and they don't like you as a person, why? I mean, they could pick anyone else to spend 5 days with. So why would they use you? Kind of thing. So it's understanding that in front of the camera, that's your job. But even when the camera is off, it's those relationships there are what you need to keep going, for that future success. So it's interesting watching who gets it really quickly, who doesn't, and then we obviously help coach along the way. But yeah, it's a business where I can have somebody that was going through to be a doctor and is extremely, extremely intelligent, and then I've got other ones that couldn't care less about any educational value, but are insanely creative. So it's these personalities. It's not like one personality fits. You couldn't fit it into, like if you say that's a group of models, guess what the personalities would be like, Whereas if you're sitting there and you go to law school, you get a pretty good idea of what that class is like. It's right. It's a mindset as opposed to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I do. It's the idea of knowing that what you're going into with a class, like the course outline, you know what you're getting yourself into, as opposed to working with each individual model you don't know until you work with them, who they'll be. and that's
Yeah,
the main
and-
selling point. Is
yeah,
the
exactly. And-
the rebooking because they're nice.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
this is.
And then if you look at the,
Sorry. Go
Sorry?
on. Sorry. Go on.
I was going to say, for instance, someone that wants to be a lawyer, there's a certain mentality too that you expect. Or if you walk into a business class, they're all very similar in kind of their mentality. Whereas when you've got something based on your looks, you can have so many different demeanors. You can't just base someone's personality off of just how they look. Kind of thing.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the
So it's all walks of life.
It really is. And the name that comes to mind, and I listened to, I don't know if you're familiar with Tim Ferriss. He wrote 4 Hour Work Week. He's kind of an entrepreneurial guy.
Okay, yeah.
He had Carly Kloss on his podcast. And
Okay, Carly, yeah.
he has his assistant do all this background work and research on who he's going to interview. And on the top of this stack of papers of Carly Kloss's, her file, that he's going to ask her about, there was a Post-it note, and it said, she might be the nicest person on the entire planet based on everyone he's talked to. And that was like on a yellow Post-it note on top of all of this information of her background. And I can't help but think that is a determining factor in success.
Huge. It's huge. Carly is a very, very nice person. And she's done extremely well for herself. And she's very entrepreneurial. She's great. There's nothing I would ever say bad. But when you look at her, she's not a standard model. So to give you a bit of reference, what the ideal measurements for a female model, if we're looking at high fashion runway, can kind of do everything. The ideal heights you're looking at is 5'10" to 5'11", 5'11 and a half. That's your ideal area that you're rolling. Now, this is like any bell curve. You've got the large majority that fits within, that target measurement. But then you've got the outliers. For example, Kate Moss. Kate Moss, if you look at her on paper, she never should have been a model at all. She's barely 5'7".
Huh.
Carly Kloss is on the other side of the spectrum. She's 6'2". I think she might even be 6'2 and a half. That's huge. That typically does not work. But, this is where it doesn't necessarily fit into the box. And this is where she has been incredible in understanding, how she's understood what motivates and what drives people. Now, of course, she's extremely beautiful. I'm not, we're not talking about just some random person that walked off the street and they're like, oh, she's got a nice personality. Let's make her a supermodel. That's not how it works. But, that's what she's done. She's very successful, very kind, very nice. I don't know anyone that would say anything bad about Carly. There's a lot of models out there that people are like, oh God, I can't wait for her success to stop because she's a horrible person. Man. But Carly's not one of them.
No, yeah, and you're bringing up another great point. It's that entrepreneurial, it's the self promotion. Even though you're booking these gigs, it's what are you doing in your off time? What are you doing to build your own image, your own personal
exactly.
image? As we wrap up here, I'm curious, are there hobbies? Is there anything you get to do besides the modeling world? Do you have other passion projects?
Yeah. I'm big into sports. My pastime when I'm not doing business related modeling fashion stuff is I'm a hockey fanatic. I'll I'll go to every hockey game I can. I'll watch any game. It doesn't even make, even when I'm in France, I'll go watch, French play hockey. It's what I love. Other than that, as I said to you, I do very entrepreneurial. There's actually, I own another company that's launching. It's a hot sauce, so completely different from the fashion business.
Oh,
but I've got some side ventures that happen, and I like to do collaborations with. I've got a few friends that are in not the model side, but the talent side, as you in the film and TV. So I mean, for me, I don't know. I like to facilitate things and manage, and I'll always be starting, creating things, and doing that kind of stuff. Oh, and I build. I like to build stuff.
What? Oh my goodness! What about build?
Oh goodness! Just don't say a bar table for out on the deck. But I mean, nice. Just getting in the process of I'm going to be building a log cabin on a lake by myself. So it's I decided, if I'm going to do a project, might as well make it real big or real complicated, and I'll build myself a cabin so I can fish.
That might be the perfect. This might be the perfect time to be doing something like that.
Hey, exactly. It's
it's
the dichotomy of my life. On one side you sit there and you gallivant around the world, globetrotting, and living this crazy, interesting thing. And then, when I'm outside of that, I put me in the middle of the forest on a lake and no one around me, and I'm good.
Oh my goodness! Wow. Well, this has been an absolutely wonderful conversation. I'm so glad that we could take this time and learn, and I could learn more about the back end of the business, so to speak, stuff that's not typically talked about.
Yeah.
No,
it's fun. It's fun to chat.
Yeah. It's really interesting to hear what drives you and how you go about operating.
Hopefully, it's interesting for your listeners as well.
Oh, I imagine they will love it. Final question for you: is there, with all these themes we've talked about today, is there a word or a phrase that you would put on a billboard for millions of people to see? It can be a story, a quote, a word. Does anything come to mind?
Oh, you know what? Oh, God. I knew that was coming too. Top of my head, I'd say humility.
Humility, yeah.
I think, now more than ever, I just don't take things too seriously. It's just, you got to be able to laugh and appreciate things, and just be a goof sometimes. And you know what? Just appreciate things. Don't take life too seriously, and just don't stress.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your slice of humility with us and humanity, and the understanding of how your demeanor. It's wonderful, and it's wonderful to get that information that you've cultivated over time. It's been a really great conversation, Michael. Is there anything else you want to add before we end here today?
No. I think just everyone hang in there. Obviously, I don't know when you're going to actually air this, but I don't think our situation's going to change too quickly over the next little while. But
yep.
Life goes on, and help each other out, and just let it be. Have fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Michael Lord.
You've been listening to Entertainment X, the podcast. You can follow Entertainment X on Instagram at _EntertainmentX_. If you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join Clay next week for another curiosity conversation on Entertainment X. Thank you for listening.